Welcome to another episode of Historically Speaking. This podcast looks at events of the past and reflects on their contemporary relevance. I am Aishwarya Pandit, Associate Professor and author. And with me, I have esteemed senior journalist and editor of Open Magazine, S Prasannarajan. Welcome, Prasanna, to our podcast. He is very erudite, he is very, very forthright in his views, and he provides a unique perspective on international and national politics. So we have the Indian election going on, which is also known as the dance of democracy. And it is but natural that one would think that we speak about it extensively because everyone is talking about election. One of my first questions to you is, Prasanna, BJP is confident about a clear majority in this when it sees the results on 4th June. It has been convinced, and it has been convinced about the Madhya Pradesh Chhattisgarh elections. Now, it was convinced in 2009. So what do you think? Does it reflect the mood of the people that they want clearer mandates?
Yeah, I think the age of the tentative mandates are gone. In democracy, people more and more vote instinctively. It is not always the mathematics, the psephological details. Sometimes it is overwhelmed by the personality. In India too, it is a vote on Narendra Modi, nothing else. He is the conversation, he makes the conversation, and he influenced the Indian mind. And he is one politician, I think, who has an easy access to the Indian mind. And the people who are set against them, they are always responding to them. They are busy defining Modi. They never define themselves because there is nothing else in this election except Modi. Because now Kejriwal or Rahul Gandhi, we don't know what they stand for. They are reminding us they are there because they are non-Modis. That is not it works. So if you have a story to tell that story. Because there is only one storyteller in Indian political arena at the moment, which I think it is Modi.
Speaking of this issue, when Prime Minister says that I am the issue of this election, and he said this constantly, why do you think the opposition has failed to define itself? Is it because it's obsessed with defining what Modi does or what he doesn't do, or they don't know that they should be what the voter wants? What is the issue?
Because the issue is that there's an Indian opposition, unlike in most other evolved democracy, it is not an entirely definable entity. It is a collection of egos, personalities, provincial sentiments, regional particularities, and subnationalism, all kind of things. But they don't have a defining personality. We don't know what they stand for. As I said, they only stand for being non-Modi, because that is what puzzles me more. What we know about what Rahul Gandhi stands for, what we know about what Kejriwal stands for. We know what Kejriwal stands for when he started, because he came with a kind of third way, a kind of apolitical politics, a kind of there is a politics beyond the established political parties. That was a very idealistic position, but in practice it was a different story. He didn't take for long for him to become a normal politician. So the opposition, we don't know what opposition is. Indian opposition, because what they call India. What's India? Apart from it's a collection of incompatibles. They are not put together they are not there, united by one overwhelming idea or ideology.
But the opposition often makes this charge that this kind of one-sided approach can also push India towards majoritarianism. It's applied very casually to this democratic exercise called elections, where we can clearly see people going out and voting. But people say we are slipping into majoritarianism, or someone make a charge like that. Do you think that is just nervousness or impulsive, or just a word which you've used casually?
Yeah. It is. I think it is an insufficiency of imagination from the opposition side, because when you have nothing to think about, you take refuge in a set of cliches, overused, majoritarianism, autocracy, fascism, all kind of things, because these kind of terms prevents you from thinking, because that is why you take refuge in them. What is the majoritarianism in India? Because India is not a Hindu country. That's what they mean. It's not a Hindu country, and it is not a anti-Muslim country.
Yes.
It is not an anti-Muslim country. That's what they mean, because we don't name, and it is because actually it's a secular place, and it all depends on how you make use of secularism. In previous governments, secularism meant because they wanted the minority ghettos for their own sake, and now they defined development in terms of communities, vote banks, because Modi, says that development has no religion. Why should development have a religion? So majoritarianism is some kind of an alarmist position that India is a Hindu country or Hindu Rashtra. India is not like a Hindu country, like an Islamic state, or I don't think so.
That also brings us to this question that whereas the opposition kind of puts us on this path that we are moving towards majoritarianism, the BJP has another counter to it, that now we are stepping into the system of dynasties, and dynasties who are very much a part of the democratic process.
Yeah.
It's almost an oxymoron in terms of dynasties in a democracy, but dynasties still exist. In Indian democracy have been thriving, and BJP is this anti-dynastic kind of a move where the Prime Minister comes from very humble origins, first generation, succeeds in politics and becomes Prime Minister of the country. So I remember there's a book by the title called Democratic Dynasties, and which kind of justified that India had its own model of democracy which had dynasties somehow coexisting. What is your take on this?
Yeah, dynasty is not necessarily anti-democratic, because in politics everywhere there are India has one of the longest serving dynasties, the Gandhis.
Yes.
America had the Kennedys for a so long time like that. Yeah. Sri Lanka had a long, big dynasties. But in India, take the Indian dynasty, I think it's not a question of how they are anti-democratic. It's not a question of how relevant they are today.
Yeah.
Is the sun is setting over the dynasties.
Yes.
The surname politics has its limits. So now I think most of the dynasties in India, I think there are look at the Gandhi dynasty, for example. So it is going down.
But is it because, Prasanna, they have failed to reinvent themselves with the time? Or
No, dynasties cannot reinvent. It's a bloodline. It's a genealogy over ideology.
Okay.
So it cannot reinvent. A dynasty can never reinvent. So maybe Rahul Gandhi reinvents, that's a different issue.
Yeah,
But I think Rahul Gandhi, for a practical reason, he's the last of the Gandhis, in the fray.
Yeah.
The last of the Abdullahs, there are so many of them, So
if you see the American example,
Yeah.
There was a time when everyone liked
Kennedy, yeah.
John F. Kennedy, Bob
Yeah.
Kennedy,
Yeah.
then his son
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy Jr.,
Even now one is
Caroline Kennedy, Ted Kennedy.
Even now one is there.
Yeah, but somehow
That's right.
even in America, they grew out of love with these dynasties,
they do
and
grow
that
out of-
nostalgia went. Somehow there is always a way found out to justify them in the Indian case. What do you have
No,
to
I think that dynasty has an expiry date. It cannot stand, because it's like the old families, everywhere, because it cannot, because and politics is changing in India. There's some kind of a great sense of empowerment, because there's a sense of, what is Modi's biggest success? He makes everybody feel that they all think that he is one of the unrealized possibilities of themselves.
Yes.
So anything is possible.
Yes.
That is biggest asset, because he said that he has a direct access to most of the voters, because they see that because they are Modi is a possibility what we can be.
Yeah.
So after that, how Modi becomes what, that's a different story. Because he somehow humanized, popularized in the Indian democracy, that the possibilities of Indian democracy.
Yes.
That
anyone who works hard can become Prime Minister.
Because we have this high command, we have this extra constitutional power centers. Because Modi became the Prime Minister, I would say, in spite of the BJP.
Yes.
Eh?
Yes,
I
that's
don't
a
think that he
very
was very much. Yeah,
strong
he was,
statement.
and he was, his campaign started not in 2014. His campaign started from 2000.
Yes.
And very, very in adversity.
Yes.
And
Yes.
he's the one politician who made best use of adversity, and he turned it into his advantage. And so he's a permanent campaigner. And in a country like India, we have an issue with terms like hunger for power. Because I sometimes call him a conviction politician, partly because of we moralize the power to some extent. It's a bad thing to have power. But there are countries, because power is necessary for change. You need more power, you can make a more difference. And that is why the difference between Modi and Rahul Gandhi to some extent, Modi had this permanent campaign for power, and he has a moral system, and he wants to make change. And Rahul is still meditating on power. He is, he doesn't have that, you never know that whether he's fighting for power or he's fighting for some, we could make up.
It's a very interesting thing, Prasanna, which I remember, which you'll also probably laugh about. In Karnataka, the Congress got a resounding mandate recently under Siddharamaiah and D.K. Shivkumar. And every time you ask them, and the MLAs, the representatives who the people have chosen, that who is your chief ministerial candidate? They were like, the high command will decide. What is the point of the mandate when you have no public has decided, you've got the votes, you've got a majority, but you still need the high command to decide, to make those decisions for you.
Absolutely. It's the power of the high command, or I'm sorry to say this, it was a Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, for example. He was an elected Prime Minister. He was a Prime Minister given to us.
Yes.
He was given to us by the extra constitutional, Our Lady of Deliverance, who didn't want to be the Prime Minister, but I think the High Command was not in power, but it was more powerful.
Yes.
And he was a selected Prime Minister. He was
not an elected one.
No. He was a selected Prime Minister. I'm not making any quality judgment on how he was a Prime Minister. I'm making the process of how you mentioned this High Command.
Yes.
It was not a fair play. It was not a fair play.
Even after that, if you've seen Shimla also, in Telangana also, you will constantly hear from the Congress, the High Command will decide.
High Command will.
So then what is the point of that mandate, that entire exercise?
Exactly. That is why Modi made himself inevitable. He was not everybody's choice within BJP itself at that time. He made himself inevitable because by the force of his personality, by the force of his slogans, and by the force of his stump speeches, and the force of his access to the Indian mind.
You've kind of said that in one of your writings, which I've gone through, that there's a particular reason behind this politics of alarmism. The constitution is in danger. It will be changed. There'll be no elections again. We see these kind of alarmist tones coming out from within India and outside India. How relevant it is to the public?
It's not relevant, but it can change it can influence the debate. It can influence the narrative, because there is a comparative study in politics, because there are certain boxes, autocracy, and then India is also sometimes very lazily put into that category. The idea of the strong leader, for example, because they always say Modi falls into this category of Putin, Erdogan, and Orban, Hungary. So there are different kind of strong leaders. Because there are strong leaders from unregulated democracies, manufactured democracies like that, like not a true democracy like in Russia or Hungary, or to some extent even Turkey. But Modi is born out of the impulses of democracy, the volatility of the democracy. Because a strong leader, because we had a long tradition of this weak leaders.
Yes.
Because of coalition, because of what you said, the high command, because the decisive leadership is sometimes the demands of democracy, is the power of the mandate. But how can you call it autocracy? I don't think that institutions in India were compromised. even the judiciary. But we are one country where the judges are selected by the judges, not by the government.
Yes, yes.
And which institution is compromised? The Parliament, Supreme Court? I don't know which institution is really compromised, because these are arguments you make to satisfy your own idea of certain terms you need to counter him, like autocracy, authoritarianism, majoritarianism, and
You often hear Western media and governments sermonizing India as if we
Yeah, yeah,
always
yeah,
need
yeah,
those
yeah.
sermons. This is how democracy should be, and this is how the democratic exercise should be. We are moralistically
Yeah, I
on
know,
a
I know,
very
I know.
high plane. So, where do you place that?
Caveats, because sometimes we also do the same thing. Sometimes we write about international affairs, other countries, we also use without because these things. Because they always praise India for certain reasons, and they have a problem with India is ruled by a Hindu nationalist party. That's how the BJP is defined. They take it literally that it is. There is some kind of a suppression of the Muslim, because it's some kind of a liberal caricaturing to some extent, but it has a lot of it's very influential imagery in Western media, the liberal media. So because I think it's a bit unfair, because as I said before, India doesn't belong to that category of regulated democracies. And I don't think that Modi, this is a country of suppressed communities. I don't think that there's a jackpot here, suppressing any particular community or anything like that. I don't feel it. Because, and of course, if there is any problem, that is certain community leadership, needs these captive communities for their own existence, their own viability.
Why you define Narendra Modi's politics as conviction politics? What do you mean by that phrase?
Conviction politics is because as you said, you have a certain value system, a moral system, and you have an idea of what you want to do in politics, irrespective of what others say about you. That's why. To some extent, Modi doesn't care what the media says or anything like that, because he has a set of belief. Because for his belief, he will do it. He's driven by his own set of principles, and he will do it and that he has the mandate. So actually, a conviction politician is somebody who is fully indebted to the mandate. This is not a mandate; he has a full control over the mandate, and he has a full control over, and he has authority to manage that mandate. Because there is a moral system. You can agree or disagree with that, but Modi has a set of values which he talks about the future where he wants to take India. You may disagree with that. That's a conviction. That's a conviction, and then he believes in power. Because as I said, because he believes in power, because that is why Modi is a permanent campaigner.
Yes.
Being in power itself is some kind of a campaign,
Yes.
not just stump speeches.
Yes.
Because power is needed to play out his conviction.
Yes, to kind of implement his vision.
To play out
and
your conviction, be truthful to your conviction.
Yeah.
You need, you to maximize power.
Yeah.
And you are maximizing power not at the cost of institutions or at the cost of the democratic, values. No, because you make use of the power in a coalition government, or there is a high command driven setup.
Yes.
Because you can do that. That's why that's why he's a strong leader. He's a conviction politician.
You have been observing the elections, Prasanna. How do you think 2024 is different from 2029? Any particular anecdote?
No, I don't have any anecdotes, but I'd say whatever difference it has, I think whatever difference has in people's perception of Modi.
Yeah.
That's it. Because 2019 to Indian politics, since 2014 now, there's only one story.
Yeah.
There's only one protagonist. There is only one plot. It's all controlled by one man. And that's it. And what was in 2000, because, like any mistake, when sun falls on a mistake, to some extent, it can wane a little bit, because Modi has been in power. So Modi's challenge to keep that what he is, to remain intact, in the coming years. So because it's the same Modi story. Nothing. I don't think that anybody making any difference. It's just, that's.
Prasanna actually settles it for us that there's only one story since 2014, and that is Narendra Modi. And he's a conviction politics who believes that power is needed to transform, and he gets resounding mandates, which gives him the power to implement his vision. Thank you, Prasanna, for a very exciting podcast, for taking out time, and for sharing very unique insights on the election and the personality that's Narendra Modi. Thank you. Thank you so much.